That's the way they all became the Brady Bunch. The Brady Bunch. The Brady Bunch. That's the way they became the Brady Bunch.
The soul and spirit, would we say that they're equated to be the same?
We could, but I mean they're two different words, so we could also make a distinction between them. But it doesn't matter. Depends on what we're trying to do, I guess. But I think I want to say self-knowledge is knowledge of spirit, and then soul and body are kind of conditioned by otherness, something outside of the self. So there's the question I'm asking is, well, I guess there's a lot of directions we could take it, but it's a question of how are we to know the self if the self is always in relation to something else? What does that mean about the question?
That pertains to an experiment in consciousness, meaning isolating consciousness from the body-mind and knowing that in its pureness. And I think that there's a lot of different ways that you can do that, yoga being one of them, certain meditative techniques being one of them. But to isolate the phenomena of consciousness, and then that is apart from the body-mind orientation. And I believe that can be done by
Maybe it's misleading to go in search of a pure self. I mean, what if we?
Well, yeah,
instead
I was
of
about to say that there's. You're saying to know yourself without being in relation to something else?
Well, I'm saying that's a problem standing in the way of self-knowledge, yeah.
Well, we can't even have a conversation even approaching that if you're going to go to that level of reality. If there's nothing to relate to, then there's no things.
Which sounds very Buddhist, the concept of interdependence.
Doesn't it relate to like the Atman, like the non-conditioned spirit that is temporarily inside of the structure, the mind complex, but can be taken out of that construct and known from that level?
Like, I always thought of it as all things are kind of co-arising, they're interdependent, and they all co-arise and interdependize within emptiness, so to speak. So it's sort of like we're all codependent on each other for our definitions and identities, but even that is still within, I don't know, the concept of void, or whatever you would like to call it.
Right. So, but I agree with what Kurt was saying before, that if we talk on this level, we almost can't continue to have a conversation, because if there is such a thing as a self that's never in relation to anything, then what are we supposed to say about it?
We might as well
like if you go up
have
one
tea
level to your soul or spirit or anything, then it's in you're at a higher level, but you're still only there because you're relating to something.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's like.
Yeah, I think it's hard to talk about, but there also needs to be a way that we can give credit to that experience of the science of knowing thyself, let's say.
Oh yeah, there would be a science of getting there, I guess.
Mm-hmm. But the Atman is also Brahman, right? So when you do recognize the supposedly pure self, it's not individual anymore.
Right.
It's universal.
Other than. Yeah.
So
that's part of the difficulty.
Self that we're seeking. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I want to know what about it? Stuff that we're seeking.
This pure self seeking, and even seeking it is something I question that is there some kind of unstated assumption here, or some assumed like we need to be seeking some self. But I'm just gonna play along with it that we are seeking this pure self. Will we know it via little mouses? This
a little bit, yeah.
What?
Yeah, there's
some of what you're commenting,
John, but
yeah.
I was getting the gist of it.
How's my lag now?
It's
Better.
Now it's good.
Okay. Well, I'll try to pick up. What I was getting at was, will we know the pure self if it is to be known through mouth noises and just talking about it, or will it be felt, living, breathing thing that can't necessarily come out this medium, but we can point towards it, but it really has to be felt. In other words, like there's an active body response of, this is correct, and how do you do that? I think the body does light up when it is in the presence of truth, if you know what I mean. And there is a spectrum of truth, is what I've come to understand. What do you guys think about that in terms of how we're going to know our pure self or most authentic self?
What comes to mind is vibration.
Is that on the right track? Vibration, yeah, that's
like
it.
we're in a
I was
very
thinking as
lower
well.
density vibration that it's at a higher vibration. Maybe it's a different language. Maybe interdimensional beings, speak in a different language that can't even be translated to English or any kind of human language. I mean, even in dreams sometimes, I don't know if you guys have dreams like this, but like meaning will come through a way that isn't through a human language, like some kind of symbolic form or something like that. But when we're here, waking life, we don't know how to translate that. So it's almost as if meaning and truth is experienced, reality is experienced in a completely different way. So definitely the spectrum idea I do like.
Yeah.
Spectrum
I
of truthiness.
Yeah.
But I think it's not just. But when we talk about these things, though, it's not just noise coming out of the mouth. It's also a living, breathing, embodied presence. So I think speech is perhaps one of the highest dimensional language we have access to, at least potentially. Sometimes we just use words as labels for things and not as the living presence of an ideal realm in the sensory world. But I think language does give us the capacity to speak with each other about invisible ideas that transcend the world that we experience with our physical senses. So we shouldn't just say it's mere words and that it lacks any other substance. We could certainly go necessarily the case that language is anything more than that, but I think it has the potential.
It's interesting how you word that, because you kind of pick and choose what I was talking about. If you were referencing my statement, which I think you were, because nobody else was saying that, but I was talking about that living, breathing, embodied language that you spoke about, but you didn't acknowledge that I included. Anyways, picture's worth 1,000 words.
Touche.
A moving picture worth how many words? When the spoken word or the verbal domain as being one of the highest realms in occasion, if I'm interpreting it right, I agree. I'm reminded of art too. Moving films. Can you communicate through music? And is that the next form of communication? Has it always been the most accurate form? Music, the universal language. Have you heard this before?
Yeah, I like that idea a lot. I like the idea of using art to communicate the higher realities, because I do think that language has its limits. That's part of the paradox of the mystic experience, is that we do get ourselves into trouble in trying to talk about it. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't, and the more credit we give to these realities being substantial, the better a culture or a society would be. So in relation to art, this needs to happen on a sacred, symbolic level, and that spirit and the idea of being able to attain or know that self needs to be communicated through whatever language, whatever art it manifests itself in. I think that's the need for sacred art and visionary art.